My friendship with Dave Weber inspired the title of this sermon, as he mentioned, Beliefs and Dogmas Divide, Values and Visions Unite. And our theme for the month, of course, is the value of compassion. Dave and I hold utterly different beliefs regarding the nature of ultimate reality. Yet we deeply agree on the values and behaviors that define a decent person and a life well lived. Ours is a very Unitarian kind of friendship. The winter 2018 edition of UU World featured a survey by the respected Pew Research Center, measured religious attitudes among nearly 2,000 Unitarians and almost 5,000 members of the general public. The results are very interesting, yet, as Dave says, we UUs don't like being put in boxes. So I'll keep that in mind as I describe some of these boxes. The Pew survey revealed big differences between UUs and the population as a whole. At least in their findings, 34% of us are solidly secular, while another 34% are religious resistors. That would mean that more than 2/3 of UUs either feel no need for religion or believe religion does more harm than good. Of the remaining third of us, 12% are Sunday stalwarts who wouldn't want to miss a weekly service. Another 16% of us see ourselves as spiritually aware in the sense of spiritual but not religious. The general public's religious profile is far different. Only half as many are solidly secular, 17% instead of 34%. Only a third as many are religious resistors, 12% instead of 34%. And half again as many as with us, 17 instead of 12%, are Sunday stalwarts. 11% of the public see themselves as diversely devout who relate to more than one religion. Surprisingly, this category is a no-show among UUs. Less surprising is that while 12% of the public see themselves as God and country believers, it is 0% among us. Pew characterized 2/3 of UUs as non-religious, yet UUs are more than twice as likely as the general public to attend weekly religious services and are more than 3 times as likely to be active in religious or spiritual organizations. Our high rating on those measures reflects our commitment to the fellowship of community and to connecting with paths of service in the world. My connection to Tapestry is personal. In 2011, I found the Laguna Beach UU Church in the Yellow Pages. By the way, I didn't find Tapestry because it was listed under T instead of U, but I went to that church and became a regular attendee, and it wasn't long before I realized that Reverend Kent's ability to speak from both heart and mind was a rare gift. And when he moved to Tapestry, so did I. As Dave mentioned, I recently donated my library of world wisdom traditions and natural science to Tapestry. It now lines the wall opposite the desk in Kent's study. Each subject area is labeled on the shelves as follows: Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Judaism, Catholicism, Protestantism, Gnosticism, and I bow to Bruce Johnson for his wonderful sermon on that. Islam, Sufism, spirituality, natural science, African American, and Native American. I've connected with each of these wisdom traditions in ways that place me among the diversely devout. As with Dave's and my friendship, the range of beliefs is vast among these teachings regarding the nature of ultimate reality. But the agreement on values is huge. This month's theme, compassion, is the bedrock moral value that is most widely shared among the great traditions. Yet if you're solidly secular or a religious resistor, as you think about the subject areas in that library roster, you may well ask, what's in it for me? First, let's clear away some of the underbrush. Yes, many terrible acts have been committed in the name of religion, and also by those with no belief in any power beyond themselves. Most religions and most political systems have within their ranks murderous fanatics as well as saints of compassion, with a whole lot of decent people and ordinary folks in between. The Pew survey found that 99% of UUs do not say it's necessary to believe in God in order to be moral and have good values. 66% of the general public agrees. The flip side of the coin is that a belief in God is never in itself a barrier to right action. What matters is how people live their beliefs. One of our neighboring churches is the Center for Spiritual Living. I have a personal connection with the San Clemente Church because its minister, Heather Clark, was a close friend of my great pal, Frank Hotchkiss, who himself was a direct descendant of Emerson. Heather's church begins each Sunday with lighting the flames of faith, a call to service. And I'm going to read it. I should note, it's a mark of the tolerance of Unitarianism that I can stand here and read something from the service of another church. Here's the flames of faith. Lighting the flames of faith. We perform this ceremony to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples and all faiths, all sentient beings, come from the one great universal presence, which we call spirit. Fundamental to this truth is the unifying nature of all religious thought and experience, which we honor here today. We light the candle for the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium, the natural way. We light the candle for the shamanic traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous peoples, the way of primal spirituality. We light the candle for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. We light the candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. We light the candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths and the path of compassion. We light the candle for Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness as the path of love. We light the candle for Islam, honoring the path of compliance with the will of God as the highest calling. We light the candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and peace. We light the candle for all forms of new thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practice of universal spiritual principles. And as the last candle is lit, let it represent the path that brought you here this morning. And it is interesting how universal candles are, how important they are to us. And I remember being in the only California mission that's on an Indian reservation in Paula in San Diego County and walking in where all the votive candles were lighting an otherwise dimly lit room and being overwhelmed with a sense of peace. There is something about candles. But let's broaden the context even beyond the list of all these faith traditions to consider some heavily loaded terms. And Dave and I have had fun debating some of these. Hope, faith, belief, experience, delusion. I've had the privilege of being on this podium before, and more than once I've told the story of my own spiritual and religious beliefs and presented them as not being based on faith, but on experience. I've invited this congregation to decide if I'm delusional or I'm presenting expanded possibilities. The Tapestry Library is an open door to explore such matters. One area of emphasis is mysticism. And pretty much all of the major traditions that I mentioned, you'll see a strong aspect of their mystical tradition in the library. It's the high ground where spirituality and science meet, Mysticism is defined as direct communication with ultimate reality. In our service, Kent refers to God of many names, mystery beyond naming. That captures the sense of it. Einstein directly intuited many of his most famous theories. In fact, apparently he wasn't that great at math, but he had direct insight into how the universe works. And he said, God is mysterious, but not mischievous. And that meant that the truth may not always be evident, but it is not twisted so that we can't find it. Put another way, truth can be paradoxical without being contradictory. Einstein's great predecessor, Isaac Newton, made his discoveries through a blend of intuition and reason. Most people know the famous Apple story and gravity and so on. A man of his time, and that was in the 1600s, Newton credited each insight to the greater glory of God. This reminds us that while science and religion can be treated separately, there need not be any conflict between them. The Tapestry Library invites you to many sources that transcend belief systems and rise to the level of values and visions. Millions of readers who are not Buddhist have benefited from the teachings of Buddha. Millions of readers who are not Hindu have benefited from the sayings of Gandhi. Millions of readers who are not Jewish have benefited from Martin Buber's I and Thou world of dialogue. Millions of readers who are not Protestant have benefited from the message of Martin Luther King Jr. Millions of readers who are not Catholic have benefited from the reflections of Thomas Merton, a Trappist monk. Millions of readers who are not Muslim have found treasures in the poetry of Rumi. Millions of readers who are not atheists have been thrilled by the cosmos as described by Carl Sagan. And many of my best friends are atheists whose religion is astrophysics. I want to focus briefly on four wisdom traditions: the African, the Native American, Vedanta Hinduism, and Islamic Sufism. In the library, you'll find a book titled The African Genius by a British author who overtook a difficult but important task: to rediscover the native wisdom of African societies before they were disrupted by the slave trade and European colonialism. His book records wise ways of living whose memory has almost been erased. The Native American section in our library is extensive, and it honors a wisdom tradition unsurpassed in being deeply connected with nature. There are few greater ironies in history that we almost wiped off the map a culture founded on the environmental sustainability that we so urgently need today. Now, with regard to Vedanta Hinduism and Islamic Sufism, these are the mystic pinnacles of their respective wisdom traditions, and they are amazingly similar. Emerson had extensive knowledge of both, and they made a large impact on his thinking. While I am diversely devout, these are the two places where I camp most comfortably. They combine a holistic spirituality with a strong urge toward natural science. And their orientation is reflected in two aspects of America today. A remarkable number of top-level computer scientists and financial analysts in this country and in this county are from India. It has been said, to be a Hindu, you have to be a mathematician, because numbers of astronomical size are built into the teachings of the tradition to describe vast cosmological cycles of creation, destruction, and rebirth. With regard to Islam, less than 2 out of every 100 persons living in the U.S. are from this culture. Yet 10 out of every 100 U.S. healthcare professionals are Muslim, including my own primary care physician, Dr. Muhammad Ali, whose office is literally next door to us here at Tapestry. Their role in healthcare is a reminder that Islamic scientists 1,000 years ago made the first strides toward modern medicine since the days of the Greeks. The figure in religious history most important in my life as a role model is Jesus. He set an unsurpassable standard of a life motivated by compassion, and he was willing to pay the ultimate price to bear witness to the truth of that message. Jesus cannot be held responsible for being portrayed by the Christian church as Savior and Redeemer, that narrow gate through which we must all pass. Jesus considered himself to be in the tradition of the prophets of Israel. They called on us to act justly toward our fellow human beings and to walk humbly in the presence of the higher reality we sense when we refer to our time of worship in this sacred space. The strongest living influence on my spirituality is Dr. Ali Kianfar, who leads the International Association of Sufism, the mystical tradition in Islam. Since the year 2000, I have benefited from his spoken wisdom and have recorded entire books of it. One such is Illumination of the Names of God, which our good friend Sheikh Fazaga of the Orange County Islamic Center calls his Bible. That's quite a compliment. He didn't call it his Quran, but he called it his Bible. Dr. Kianfar and the Sufis hold an annual celebration dinner, and this year's speaker is Rabbi Michael Lerner, who heads the Network of Spiritual Progressives. Many years ago, Rabbi Lerner honored me with an offer to be managing editor of his magazine, Tikkun, which means the repair of the world. So today I stand before you as one for whom Jesus is the great example of a moral life. Hindu and Islamic mysticism offer boundless treasures of insight and awareness. Judaism and Buddhism contain great voices whose words resonate. And natural science is the faith of many close friends. Meanwhile, I look to the Native American tradition for guidance in my Sierra Club work. Perhaps the message in all of this, as Pope John Paul II would say, is be not afraid. Yes, dreadful deeds are done in the world each day, and the deliberate neglect of those in need and disregard for truth are only slightly less awful than physical violence. And Dave referred to that. How can you not, if you're honestly looking at the world as it appears to us? The challenge for persons of compassion is to maintain resilience in confronting these evils. And for those of us who are diversely devout, a reliable source of such energy can be found in the values and the visions of the great wisdom traditions. The Tapestry Library is an invitation for you to explore this resource. On Sundays, if the door to Kent's study is open, feel free to come in. If the door is closed, please respect the private meeting occurring. On weekdays, call the office to be sure the building is open. And on the bookshelf, you will find a checkout sheet with spaces for your name, title of the book, and dates borrowed and returned. May you enjoy the library.